we've started to get messages about Israel on the Roger Waters videos, right? About Roger being a terrorist supporter, pro
Yeah,
Hamas.
yeah, I know.
I'm like, I mean, people are just like to pick a side and pick enemies to point fingers at. You and I both know if it was up to Roger Waters, there'd be no fighting between Israel and Palestine. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
He does not approve any of what's going on over there from both sides.
No, I don't think any sane person, regardless of whatever they say on YouTube, I don't think any sane person has any sort of truck with what's going on over there. But to be honest, I don't know very much about it because I have been deliberately trying to avoid it. I've come off Twitter. I don't have Twitter anymore. I don't watch news. I hear about what's happening from my wife and from my friend Michael, who tells me a bit. For example, I didn't know how the thing started. I had no idea what had happened, and Michael's talking to me as if I did, and I said, I'll stop. I don't know what kicked this off, so you'll need to tell me. So he went through it all about how Hamas had broken through the barriers and gone off and done some horrible things and all of that. Right, okay, now I know. But you know what? I wish I didn't know, because now I've got that in my brain that I have to deal with. And the first casualty of war is the truth. So it doesn't really matter what you think.
Exactly.
What you think. You don't know, because you'll see pictures and you don't know where the pictures come from, because you don't know what Palestine looks like. You don't know what Israel looks like. You don't know what these people look like. You can't tell. And we know from the past that we've been told that here's pictures of dead people on this side of the argument, but what you're actually seeing is dead people from 10 years ago from the other side of the argument, because you don't know. So all that you're doing is really reinforcing your biases by picking the things that make you feel comfortable about your attitude to it. And if you get on the wrong side of it, my God, you've got a task, haven't you? Because you either have to say, do you know what, I fucked up, I got that wrong, I'm on the wrong side of it, and now I can admit it. That's really hard to do, especially today. Or you have to do what I saw Ben Shapiro doing a little bit, which is double down on it. And I don't know the context because I haven't been following it, but I watch Ben Shapiro videos from time to time, and one popped up in my feed and it was him saying some horrendously provocative things, and I thought, I don't even want to know what the context of this is, but this is what the real sort of ugliness of war does to people. It bifurcates people into two camps, and you're not involved. Even if you're of the ethnic origin that is involved, and you're somewhere else, like you're a Palestinian living in America, or you're Jewish living in America, or you're wherever you are, you're not directly involved, yet you're forced to take a side, and we're all expected to take a side, and it's rocking the political establishment in the UK right now. We've got one member of the government's been sacked. David Cameron's been brought back in to try and shore up the fucking damage, and the Labour Party, the opposition parties, and all sorts over it. There's been resignations there too. I'm getting all this from my wife, who takes great joy in telling me all the things I don't want to know. She thinks I should know these things, So I oh, okay then. But it's horrible. It's just the whole thing. Again, we're doing this again, are we? Oh, when I was 20, if you'd said to me, yeah, we're doing the same thing, all that shit that's going on right now, it'll be going on when you're 60. Really? I would have given up. I would have given up watching it then. I would have given up having any opinion on it or any kind of view on it. Because if, as an ordinary person, you take a view on these things and you get to vote once every 4 or 5 years, the rest of the time it's just driving you nuts. It's a war you can do nothing about. There's no point in choosing a side because they're not coming into your country doing those things. It's probably not going to affect you in that way. And when you look outside, like Bill Hicks said, where is all this mayhem happening? You look out the window and it's birds tweeting, and you're perfectly happy, you're perfectly safe, everything's fine with you, yet you're expected to be in a state of panic about something you can do nothing about. Because of what?
Yep.
Because the war machine has to keep turning. The oil has to be obtained to keep the machine turning, and we all have to be put in a state of panic in order to keep the machine turning, so that we'll accept all of this shit and we'll pay all of these taxes for all of these wars. Nobody ever votes for a war. Nobody votes for a war. Nobody's ever going to vote to send their child to a war unless they're a fucking psychopath, you know. So I get, as you can tell, I get quite annoyed by the whole thing, and I try and avoid it because it does raise my blood pressure, which is not a good thing.
Well, that's it, right? And I've tried my best to objectively look at things, try and shake people up a bit. You know, like when the Russia thing and Ukraine thing broke out, I kept saying to people, don't point your finger at Russia here. Like, I'm not saying Russia's not guilty here, but you know, it's like getting angry at a bear you poked with a stick for 5 minutes before it fucking attacked you, yeah. Right? You know, like, is it really the bear's fault, or is it the guy poking the bear with the stick, right? Like, I mean, you know, we're going to shoot the bear because he killed the person, but the person with the stick deserved to die, you know, because he was poking the bear with it, you know? So it's kind of one of those things, right? So I'm not, and it's a historic war. It's a conflict that's been going on before you and I were born, right? So how do we even reconcile with that? But I had a weird thing around this one. For me, I had a weird experience with this one because the day the attack from Hamas happened on Israel, I was in a window with no pain for like that day because I was having a lot of pain in my hip, and I woke up that morning and I felt good, and I was like, so I said to Megan, I'm going for a walk. So me and Zappa went for like a 3-hour walk along the beach, and when I say beach, it's not a beach, it's rocks, like boulders, right? So it's, you know, it's not an easy walk, and and it's a long, hard walk. The dog loves it. It's very beautiful out there, so I love being out there. So I went for this long walk, and I had my earbuds in. I was listening to music. And on the way back, I decided to re-listen to the newest Porcupine Tree record, the one that came out about a year and a half ago. And there's a song on there that I've affectionately referred to as the best Opeth song in years, which it sounds like Opeth, and it sounds like Opeth used to sound, called Rat's Return. And the song is about how no matter how hard you try and keep the political spectrum and the people above you, the people who call the shots, no matter how hard you try and keep them accountable and try and put good people in place, the rats always find a way to the top. Like, they always return. They're always going to be Genghis Khangs. There's always going to be Vladimir Putins. There's always going to be, you know, whatever it is we got going on. Justin Trudeau over here, and you know, all this shit. There's always going to be like these tyrannical people that don't respect the people that they're supposed to be leading, and they're going to treat everybody like they're fucking cattle, right? And I was listening to the song, and I know that Steve Wilson lives in Israel, right? That's where his wife is. That's where his kids are. That's where they live. I
did not know
right?
that.
He lives in Israel.
He lives there, does he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah. So
wow.
So he has always been kind of quiet about the Israeli conflict because he doesn't think Israel is the bad person over there. He thinks these look at them like the occupiers because he's in love with an Israeli. He makes songs with two of the biggest pop stars from Israel, Aviv Geffen and Nanette Taib. He makes music with both those people, and they're like superstars over there, right? So like he obviously has some sort of love for the place in Israel. Maybe it's religious. I don't know what it is because he keeps his cards close to his chest. Like no one really knows much about Steve Wilson other than his taste in music and the music he makes, right? Which is good. I prefer it that way. I don't want to know who Stephen Wilson votes for. It might make me not want to listen to him or something stupid. You know?
That would be terrible. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, so I'm walking along the beach, and I had this sick feeling. I'm like that. I was picturing Stephen Wilson just dead, his house in pieces, and him being killed by a bomb strike from Palestine. But I didn't know that like the war hadn't broke out yet. This happened a few hours later.
Wow.
Right? Or it may have happened at that moment. But I was walking on the beach imagining Stephen Wilson dying because of an act of war in Israel and being such a shame because he doesn't look at Israel as this dangerous place to live. He thinks it's the best place to live, apparently. That's where he lives. You know, so it was a weird feeling. And then I come home and it was like an hour later, my dad's going like, hey, did you hear about what happened there in Israel today? And I was like, did Stephen Wilson die? You know, and he's like, what do you mean, Stephen Wilson? And I was like, why this horrible vision that Stephen Wilson died in Israel today? And he's like, well, maybe, but there's a war going on. Like Israel just declared war against Hamas. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And then I went and checked out and saw the terrorist attacks and whatnot. And it's funny how it's terrorism. It's an act. It's a government act if it's going one way, but it's terrorism if it's coming this way. You know, like
of course,
I hate that shit.
Yeah,
of
course.
Every act of war is an act of terrorism.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
You know. Anytime a world leader decides to start killing innocent civilians, it's terrorism, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, there was a great quote from Elon Musk. I'll probably butcher it, but it was something like, "War is young men who don't know one another killing one another on behalf of old men who do know one another.
Yeah,
and I thought that
that's
was
exactly true.
I thought that was a great fucking quote, because these guys that go to war, you know, the high hegians, as we'd say over here, they have sat round tables, they have met, they have looked one another in the eye.
Yeah.
They know one another.
Their kids know each other.
But you know, the young people that are pressed into service to commit these horrors, you know, they don't know one another, or they only know what they're told to do, and it's I one of the sort of tragedies of war is that what it does to the individuals who are involved in it, who have to practice it. You know, we all know what happens to these guys. You know, you're 18 or 19 and you're told to press that button, and you're watching a monitor and you see the monitor turns white, and you know you've got a kill ratio. I guess it's like a computer game, you know, or you're driving a tank and you've got a crosshair on a car and you press the button and the car disappears, and it's only later when you go, how many people did I actually kill? Because when you're 18 or 19, you don't know. You're not growing up yet. You're not even in your adult phase. You haven't become the butterfly. You're still the fucking caterpillar when you're 18 or 19, or even 20, in your early 20s even. Some people are not. Some people are born old with old souls. But a lot of these people that are actually doing this, they're gonna bear the brunt of it. You know, aside from the obviously the horrors of the acts themselves that are you know unspeakable, the legacy of war is there's no war has ever produced a legacy of happiness. You know, the only people that are benefiting from this are the people who sell the mechanisms of war, and it's the war machine. And that was one of the great things about, of course, the much reviled Donald Trump. You know, was that he still did it. There were still bombings and things going on, but at least he managed to ameliorate it somewhat. He managed to put a damper on some of it and didn't declare any new wars. And I like you said about Roger Waters. Roger Waters wouldn't want this to be happening, and I'm sure Donald Trump would be stopping this like immediately. But it all kind of links back to the exit from Afghanistan and how that filters into what happened in Ukraine and what's happening in Palestine.
It's all related.
It's all related because, yeah, I can't quite figure it out myself. I don't know if you have got a perspective on it, but the abandonment of the materiels in Afghanistan was a really weird one at the time. But has that now become obvious why they did it? I can't quite figure it out myself.
Was it? We'll never know the truth of that one either, but there's a lot of speculation that the majority of the weapons Hamas are using are from Afghanistan that were left there by the U.S.
Oh. So
and
the U.S. left them there knowing that it would cause trouble. Fucking hell, right? Yeah, that does make perfect sense. They left them there. They left them there because there's no point in having a war machine if the other side isn't armed just the same as you.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking
both sides needs balls and bats to play, right?
Exactly. Oh fuck that. Yeah, Jesus Christ. Holy shit.
And then the other way I found this thing is affecting me in a way that I need to shut this out is I listened to the new Steve Wilson record 2 weekends ago, and I did it proper, right? Dark Room, LSD. It was the first time I've had a proper listening to a record since Mackenzie's been born and everything. And I put in a 5.1. It's supposed to be listened to in Atmos. I don't have Atmos, but I do have the 5.1 system. So I listened to it in 5.1, and you could tell, like he said, this album was written with the idea of it being spatial audio. It wasn't remixed into spatial audio. It was written with spatial audio in mind, and you can hear it. Like it's a joy. It is a completely different experience, surround sound versus stereo. So if you do have an option to do it that way, try. If you have a friend with a system like that, or if you have it set up somewhere, give her a go if you can. But anyway, there's a song in there, a very beautiful song, a duet with him and Nanette, the Jewish pop star, Nanette Taib. And the song is called Rock Bottom. And when I first heard it, I pictured it as being about someone who's been a victim of war trying to survive. It's about staying alive. And all I could think about was like these two people in Israel singing about trying to stay alive while they're murdering thousands of people. As I'm listening to this, there's millions or thousands of Palestinians are dying right now. I'm listening to these people in Israel singing about staying alive. And I know the song was written in 2020. So it's not like it's a new song. Like it's just finally coming out for us to hear it. So I know it's got nothing to do with the war, but I could not help but think about it, right? And I felt nothing but contempt. So I'm going like, who are you, Israeli pop star, singing about staying alive, while like your fellow countrymen are literally blowing up hospitals right now because they say there's guns underneath of them. So they have to kill a whole hospital full of people because Hamas stored some guns under it. You know, like, how does that make you any better than those people? You know, and it turned out the song was not about war. It's about her bipolar disorder and about how she has a hard time with it, which made me feel even cheaper. You're singing about being sad because you got bipolar disorder and you're a rich pop star who sings with Steve Wilson. Like, fuck off with your fucking bipolar bullshit, you know? But,
oh dear.
And then I'm not trying to make light of it. Like, I mean, bipolar disorder, as far as I understand, is a horrible thing to live with. You know, do I believe she's actually bipolar? I don't know. People throw that on themselves all the time nowadays. Yeah. Who knows? And if she is bipolar, I'm sorry, Nanette. I didn't mean any harm. You're a beautiful singer, and I love your voice, and I would, you know, even have you sing on one of my records one day would be amazing, you know? But it was just, I don't know. It's shitty how the older you get, the more aware you are about certain things. Like, if I was 20 years old, I would not have been thinking about Israel listening to that song. I would have been thinking about the song.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I need to get better at shutting that stuff out because I'm not an agent of change. I can't even change the minds of the people in my own house. How am I going to save the world, right? Like, I can't.
Well, you do it. You're doing it the same way I'm doing it, through the art. That's how we change. That's the only way that we've got to change the world. And that's what we are tasked with doing. Whether it's through some cosmic plan or some cosmic agreement, or whether it's just circumstance, that's the only thing we've got. You're right. You know, it's like that's why I'm trying my best to withdraw from the whole withdraw from the news cycle. It's not that I'm withdrawing from the world, although I kind of am as well, because I don't go out as much as I used to. There's various reasons for that, but yeah, I think when it begins to affect the way you think about art, you know, the music is art, and you know, all that kind of stuff. When it begins to affect the way you think about that, then that's a real tragedy, because that's supposed to transcend all of that. That's supposed to be something that can stand for all time and can be a monument to the artistic inspiration. But the artistic inspiration can be informed by what's going on in the world, and sometimes that is in a way that you appreciate, and sometimes it's in a way that you rail against. So your reaction to that song is perfectly understandable and entirely reasonable. I mean, it's not that it's not that you're at fault. It's that the world's at fault, because you don't know what that's. You don't even really know. I don't know. None of us know what Stephen Wilson's attitude to it is, and I don't know what his origin is. Then, if he's living in Israel now, I guess he's an English musician. That's what they say on Wikipedia. But
yeah, he's from the UK, and he even recorded the album in the UK. So
yeah.
I don't know if he just prefers to work in the UK when he makes his music, but his home
so
studio is.
Yeah, so we don't know what is, and from listening to his work, his politics, so far as it appears in his work, seems to be aligned with what I would think. I mean, he seems to be talking about the same kind of things that I would talk about. He doesn't seem to be. There's nothing in there that would make me think, oh, he's an apologist for the war machine or anything like that. And I'm sure that there's certainly a decent chance that he's as horrified by what's going on as any of us are, you know. And that's the thing that we've got to remember, is that there's people in Israel that object to what's going on, just as there's people in the UK that object to what the UK government does. You know, the government doesn't speak for the people. That's the fallacy. It used to. I mean, you could say that there was a time in some places where the authority spoke for the people, because the people and the authority were united in what they were trying to do. Like in the UK after the war, there was a great sort of socialist movement, which was the government and the people together going forward. You could say, you know, in the same sort of thing in Russia when the revolution happened there, in France when the revolution happened there, and in America when it was getting set up and rebelling against the British. You know, there have been times when, through these kind of big movements, governments and people have been aligned. But where revolution's not happening, that's not the case. It usually is the case that the government is not aligned with the people. that because of the political systems we have, that alignment doesn't happen. So, I'm pretty sure. I would like to think anyway that Stephen Wilson's as horrified by what's going on as any of us are, and that might filter through to his art. Maybe the next album, or and I don't know what the timing is for his releases. They seem to be all over the place a bit, but maybe he's writing songs now that are more about the situation he's found himself in there. I don't know. We'll time will tell. But yeah.
What I find he doesn't. Yeah, he tends to stray away from typical political hot buttons in his music, which I appreciate. I don't typically appreciate political music, because even like Roger Waters is accused of being a political musician, but his music is vaguely political, right? It uses metaphor and symbolism, and he doesn't talk typically. Like, I've only once heard him use the name of a politician, which is that Whitehouse, whatever. What's her name?
Mary Whitehouse.
Yeah, Mary Whitehouse. He refers to her in Dogs or Pigs, whatever
Right.
song it was. You White House, whenever he says it.
Yeah.
So I don't think, like, the only closest thing I can think about politically in Stephen Wilson's music is he had a song a couple albums ago called Refugee. It's about someone sleeping in straw and mud, so it's about someone who's like a victim of a war-torn country, but it wasn't about like who was at fault. It's just someone who's a victim of war. And then he's got some songs where he speaks very negatively about the medicating children, right? Like the fear of a blank planet. It's all about kids walking around on Ritalin and Prozac and shit, and listening to their iPods and just shuffling around the mall, So, but other than that, like most of his music is either pulling apart the darkest parts of the world or the most beautiful parts of the world. Kind of, he likes the polar opposites. He writes about serial killers and he writes about babies, or he writes about like a sunset or something, or whatever, So, which I align with that myself.